Attorneys representing dancehall star Vybz Kartel and his co-accused have filed habeas corpus applications on behalf of their clients. Habeas corpus, this seems to bring a person before the courts to determine if their detention is lawful. Kartel's lawyer Isaac Buchanan says they appeared in court Monday morning to begin the process.
A habeas corpus application was filed for Mr. Palmer, Mr. St. John and Mr. Campbell by their attorneys. The matter was set to be heard today. However, the judge was of the view that the Director of Public Prosecution is an interested party, as well as for the jurisprudence that proper submissions be put before the court by those parties.
The habeas corpus application comes despite a June 10 retrial hearing for Kartel and his co-accused. Mr. Buchanan says they filed the application because while they wait for a retrial hearing, the liberty of his client and his co-accused remains unanswered.
The men are in no man's land as it is. One would call it la la land, one would be it's a lacuna in the law where you're not convicted, you're not charged, but you're held in abeyance. I think in terms of where the law is, that the legislators would have needed to make certain amendments to account for a situation where a conviction is quashed, but the matter is not yet before the court. And so for me, a day in prison is like 1,000 years, certainly to me. And so for that reason, one can appreciate that having your conviction set aside, quashed, and to be still in prison for awaiting that, it can be very stressful.
Isaac Buchanan, attorney representing Vybz Kartel. Opposition spokesperson on tourism, Senator Janice Allen, is calling on the government to address issues caused by travel advisories issued by the United States that cautions Americans about traveling to Jamaica. The Level 3 advisory released on January 23 cited crime and medical services as key reasons to reconsider traveling to Jamaica. Chairman of Playa Resorts, Bruce Wardinsky, highlighted the negative effects the January 23 advisory had on its business. According to the article, the company faced many cancellations for its Jamaican resorts. Senator Allen says, given what she's been told by multiple sources, she's questioning Tourism Minister Edmund Bartlett's claims that Jamaica is seeing an increase in arrivals for 2024. Senator Allen cited data from both of Jamaica's international airports to support her claims that the country is being negatively affected by the travel advisories.
MBJ in Montego Bay saw a 4.2% decline, or 19,000 fewer arrivals than April 2023, and Kingston saw a 7.6% decline, or 11,200 fewer arrivals than April 2023. The fact is, in addition to Frontier Airlines that has cancelled service from some routes into Jamaica, American Airlines has cancelled plans for double daily service from Dallas and is keeping only a single daily flight. Other airlines like United and JetBlue have reported reduction in load factors and have attributed this to the travel advisory on Jamaica.
Senator Allen is calling on Minister Bartlett to engage with the stakeholders to discuss a solution to the issue.
Like the CEO of Playa said, in order to save some of the cancellations, they have had to relocate people from Jamaica to Cancun and the Dominican Republic. The airlines are reporting the same thing, yet the minister would want us to believe that there has been no impact from the travel advisory. The government and the minister need to wake up to the reality of what's happening in the industry and take whatever action is necessary to stop the bleeding. Hoteliers, transport providers, and attractions are all feeling it. The time for collaboration and action is now. A crucial development such as this requires the calling of all stakeholders to the table to immediately work through a solution instead of constant attempts at pulling wool over our eyes.
Senator Janice Allen, the opposition spokesperson on tourism. Minister of Digital Transformation, Senator Dana Morris Dixon, says the Data Protection Act should never be used as a tool to block legitimate access to government information. She made the statement in response to concerns raised by opposition Senator Peter Bunting during Friday's sitting of the Upper House. It comes after Tax Administration Jamaica TAJ cited the act as a reason to deny access to information requests. Siobhan Campbell tells us more.
The ATI request sought to identify the owners of a property in Anotta Bay, St. Mary, and another in Mandeville, Manchester, that were released for a total of $400 million. The properties remained unoccupied up until August last year. The TAJ has claimed that unspecified provisions of the Data Protection Act, DPA, bar it from making the disclosure. Opposition Senator Peter Bunting called on Minister Morris Dixon to clarify the government's position on the matter.
TAJ came back the day after and said they defend their refusal of the access to information request on the same basis, and closed, the article closed, this is on the 20th of April, that the TAJ will engage the Office of the Information Commissioner to seek further guidance. I'm assuming now, weeks later, that an opinion has been provided to the TAJ to guide them, and I would ask the Minister to speak conclusively to the nation on the government. We don't want one agency saying one thing and another agency saying another thing. What is the position of the government on this issue?
Senator Morris Dixon says the DPA only restricts the use of personal information.
You know, like your name, your age, any health issues that you may have, very important pieces of your data, including your email address and your phone number, that you do not want out there. That in no way precludes an access to information request. If you have an access to information request wherein giving it, you're giving personal identifiable information, then you cannot. But a name is, or a company, a business, you know, that's just the business, right? And we need to ensure that we're going by the law. And the law does say that it is personal identifiable information, and being able to protect that and not necessarily share that with third parties.
She says the Office of the Information Controller is currently working with the TAJ on the interpretation of the law. But she says a citizen's right to information must be upheld.
We have to ensure that we preserve that, and that this new law is not used on that basis. And we've made that very clear, that where there is a legitimate request for information, that must be furnished. We do not see the Data Protection Act. It was never envisioned to be an act that would preclude the public from getting legitimate information that has been requested from the government, and we will not use it as such. And so as soon as I have the final verdict between their lawyers, and lawyers may have differences of opinion, but as I said, the basic principle, is that we still believe that there is a right to information.
Siobhan Campbell for Nationwide News.
Director of the Mona Law Institute, Dr. Christopher Malcolm, says the government must carefully examine the new rules being proposed by the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council regarding appeals. Dr. Malcolm says the adjustments could have serious ramifications for the constitutional rights of Jamaicans.
Now, what the new rules being implemented by the Privy Council are, is that there are rules effectively being put in place to sift out matters, notwithstanding that you're proceeding to them on that constitutional right to appeal. They are effectively being put in place to sift out matters for the Privy Council, which matters they hear or do not hear, even though you have gone there as a bride. So what that will in substance do is that it will have the effect of effectively altering your constitutional rights outside of our control. And by a judicial process, they are seeking to amend and, in fact, abridge rights that have been provided for under our Constitution.
The proposed adjustment is being made under Rule 22. It says where permission to appeal has been granted, a single member of the Judicial Committee will review the appeal. If the member considers that appeal devoid of merit, they will invite the appellant to file submissions to show that the appeal has merit. This will take place in front of a panel of 3 who have the right to dismiss the appeal if it is found without merit. Dr. Malcolm says, given the implications of such a rule, the government must speak up.
I think the call, if there should be one, or if there is one, should be for lawyers and other persons who understand what is happening to start expressing their voices, and to do so bearing in mind what is being affected, which is the rights of our people. And I think the government also has an obligation through the particular arms that apply, Ministry of Justice and Legal and Constitutional Affairs and other departments that may be available, to then speak to what is happening as to whether or not they find this acceptable, given the nature of our Constitution, given the nature of our final court.
Dr. Christopher Malcolm, director of the Mona Law Institutes. Meanwhile, Dr. Malcolm says the Privy Council, through this rule, is essentially abridging the rights of Jamaicans for administrative convenience.
That is the voice of the people ought to be heard, and they decided that it was constitutionally proper for it to have been sent back. So if they took a decision such as that in a matter where there was no legal requirement for it to happen, why then should they take it onto themselves to then abridge rights that are clearly provided for in our Constitution? Because they think it is administratively inconvenient for them, which is what it is. They're making an administrative convenience decision in a way that has the substantive effect of undermining clearly provided for rights in our Constitution.
Dr. Malcolm says there should be no further filter applied to an individual who has already been granted leave to appeal.
What you go to the court for is to have your matter adjudicated upon. What they are looking at is to make an initial determination without your having the right to remember, the basic principle of the rule of law and the basic principle about how decisions are to be made is that person needs to give a full and complete opportunity to present his or her own case in accord with law. Now, if the law says I have a right to present my case, why should I be prevented from presenting? Because a judge has determined that I don't like the case. That for me is what it calls. It is one thing, because remember, there are some matters where you will not get leave to appeal because you have not met the threshold, right? But if I have already met the threshold, why should I be prevented from presenting my case?
Dr. Christopher Malcolm, director of the Mona Law Institutes. Head of the Public Safety and Traffic Enforcement Branch, PSTEB, ACP Gary McKenzie, says the police are contemplating releasing the pictures of motorists with outstanding warrants in their Traffic Thursdays initiative. So far, the initiative has seen the police release the names of motorists and the number of outstanding warrants they have.
Several have come forward and we will be treating with them. We expect that more will come forward. If they do not, we will continue the process of finding them. We intend to also promulgate more names, and depending on how the process goes, we might very well put up photographs as well.
ACP McKenzie says the initiative is in a move to ensure enforcement and road safety is bolstered.
The intention is to ensure that we have a very good road safety network, and so all these activities are geared towards that. If persons are prosecuted and they do not attend court, then the matters are not resolved. And what we may find is that we could have repeat offenders, persons who drive carelessly, commit these breaches 1, 2, 3, 4 times, and they are still out there. And so they are a danger to themselves and others. Our responsibility is to ensure that the circle of enforcement is completed and the matters are adjudicated as required.
ACP Gary McKenzie, head of the Public Safety and Traffic Enforcement Branch. A pedestrian and a motorist have been killed in 2 separate crashes overnight. In the latest fatal crash, a 46-year-old man was killed in Manchester at about 1:55 Monday morning along the Winston Jones Highway after his vehicle, a Nissan AD motor car, collided in a motor truck. Reports are both vehicles were traveling in a westerly direction, with the Kenworth T800 motor truck traveling ahead of the Nissan AD motor car. According to police reports, upon reaching a section of the roadway, it's alleged that the driver of the Nissan AD collided into the back of the Miller tractor-trailer laden with cement that the Kenworth motor truck was hauling, causing damage to both vehicles. The driver of the Nissan motor car was pronounced dead at hospital. In the other crash, a pedestrian was killed at about 7 p.m. along the P.J. Patterson Highway. Reports are a 2018 blue Toyota Vitz motorcar and a brown Toyota RAV4 motorcar were traveling easterly along the highway. Upon reaching a section of the highway, it's alleged that the male pedestrian walked into the path of the Toyota Vitz motorcar and made contact with the left wing mirror before falling to the ground and colliding with the Toyota RAV4. The male pedestrian was pronounced dead upon arrival at hospital. So far, 12 people have died in road crashes in May, but since the start of the year, 155 people have died on the nation's roads. Investigators assigned to the Narcotics Division are investigating the seizure of cocaine worth more than 28 million Jamaican dollars at the Sangster International Airport last Thursday. They report that they have arrested a Dutch national in relation to the seizure. The police say the man, whose name they have not disclosed, was checking in to board a flight destined for Brussels, Belgium, when the drugs were found. The detectives became suspicious after a preliminary interview with the man and searched his luggage, where they found 6.1 kilograms of cocaine concealed in false compartments. They subsequently arrested him on reasonable suspicion of breaches of the Dangerous Drugs Act. In regional and international news now, regional news, the Saudi Fund for Development, SFD, is providing St. Vincent and the Grenadines with a $135 million loan for a number of projects in the education, national security, health, youth and sports and housing sectors. St. Vincent's Finance Minister Camilo Gonzalez signed the agreement with Saudi officials in Washington last month. The Parliament gave the green light to the accord as it debated the Natural Disaster Construction and Rehabilitation Project Loan Authorization Bill. The loan is at 2% interest to be paid over 20 years, with a 5-year grace period, and was included in the $1.6 billion budget for 2024 that Parliament approved in January. International news now. Fierce fighting has been reported in Jabalia, northern Gaza, after the Israeli military went back into areas where it said Hamas had regrouped. Residents who fled said they had seen tanks advancing towards Jabalia's refugee camp, which has come under heavy bombardment since Saturday. Palestinian armed groups also said they were battling troops in the camp. The UN has said 360,000 people have fled Rafah in the south since an offensive began a week ago. The Israeli military has ordered the evacuation of the eastern third of the city, which is swollen with more than 1 million Palestinians taking refuge. On Sunday, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken warned Israel that a full-scale offensive in Rafah might provoke anarchy without eliminating Hamas. His comments echoed briefings to Israeli media by unnamed senior Israeli military figures who said Hamas's resurgence in northern Gaza was due to a lack of specific plans for Israel's government for the day after the war. An estimated 300,000 people trapped in the devastated region are also experiencing a full-blown famine due to a lack of aid deliveries, and that's according to the head of the World Food Program.